This is the Sai Health week, right? So let's start off with a World Health Organization definition of health. So World Health Organization says, health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So today's objectives, so we'll cover 5 main areas. We're going to explore positive versus negative thoughts. We'll have a little bit of fun and we'll see what the science says about this, okay? And then we'll touch on a few more serious topics. I mean, this is a Sai Health week. One aspect of health is mental health, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on a little bit today. So we want to see how the power of positive thought interacts with mental health and a little bit adverse mental health as well. We will see what Swami says about the topic. And then we'll leave with some take-home messages, hopefully, about how we can actually cultivate and foster positive thinking. So what does Swami say? So this is from Sathya, volume 26 in 1996. And Swami says that all of your good thoughts originate from the heart, which is the altar of God. And he also says, Yat Bhavam Tat Bhavat. As are the feelings, so are the results. So everything is a reflection of the inner being. Many times you would have heard Swami say in some of his discourses that he is nothing but reaction, reflection, and resound of what we are. And he often says that if you say no, he will echo no. And he says that if we say yes, then his response will be yes, yes, yes. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen The Secret. This is a really good production. You can just go on YouTube or it's on the internet. It's a very nice kind of storytelling video that essentially embodies this, what Swami says, which is, as is the feeling, so is the result. Okay, so what does Swami say about negative thinking? So, he says the negative thinking is the root cause of sorrow. So Swami gives us a few tips here. Okay, so he says that as soon as a thought arises in your mind, inquire whether it is good or bad. So for that, we need to use the power of our discrimination. Because let us not feel guilty about bad thoughts. Sometimes bad thoughts come. We don't know. We won't go into where they come from because that's outside of the scope of this presentation. But they do come. And Swami says, if it is a bad thought that comes through no fault of your own, try to keep it away as far as possible. So he says, where do you get peace? So peace is not from the outside world, it has to come from within. And you can only have peace when you make your mind still and focus all your thoughts on God. Okay, so let's have a little bit of fun with some science. So some of you may have heard me talk on this before, but it's okay, it'll be a bit of a revision. Okay, just by a show of hands, has anyone heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto? Oh, we have some experts in the audience already. Okay, good, excellent. And just by a show of hands, has anyone heard of Dr. Junsai? More people, good. And has anyone come across the nun study? No, okay. But as a GP, when I come on to the mental health part of it, this is something that I see every day in my working life, so I want to just share a little bit of what I see in my work. So, Dr. Masaru Emoto, for those of you who don't know, was a Japanese scholar who had this New York Times bestseller, which was called The Hidden Messages in Water. So what he did was he did some experiments with water crystals, right? So he examined water crystals under the microscope and he did various experiments with them. So he exposed them to an array of words. Positive words, negative words, positive and negative thoughts, positive and negative emotions. So you can see under the microscope, the one on the left. So these are water crystals that were exposed to love, gratitude, positive emotions. And you can see that it's formed a very beautiful hexagonal shape compared to the one on the right. And these water crystals were fed negativity. Words such as, you disgust me, and you should just go away, and you're not worth anything, you're worthless. So you can see how disordered they're not formed very well. It's not a beautiful structure at all, you can see. These are more examples. So the one on the left, you can see that beautiful star-shaped pattern, and those water crystals were loved, and they were exposed to words and emotions and feelings such as, I love you. And then the one on the right, you can see it's not symmetrical, it's disordered. It looks like this water crystal was in a bit of distress, and it's because it was called a fool, unfortunately. Now, he extended this a bit further, okay? So he's a Japanese scholar, and in Japan, there is this place, there's this dam called the Fujiwara Dam, and basically it was a very polluted dam. So he wanted to do this experiment, and he did successfully with a Buddhist monk, a Buddhist priest. So Buddhist priest came and presided over the dam and did Buddhist prayers for over an hour. So Dr. Emoto looked at the water crystals before and after the prayer. And once again, you can see even when the crystals were polluted, the water was polluted, you can actually change it with the power of positivity, the power of prayer. Now, extend it even further. Okay, we just had a wonderful bhajan today, and he experimented on the effect of music on water. So you go look at his website, there are absolutely hundreds of pictures of water crystals exposed to lots of different types of music. I hope there are no heavy metal music lovers in the audience. If you are, I'm very sorry to display this following slide. You can see on the right, those water crystals were exposed to heavy metal music. And the one on the left was exposed to Mozart's Symphony No. 40. So I wish he had done an experiment with bhajans. So, you know, it would have been nice to see that. So, what is the point of all of this, right? Does anybody know what percentage of our bodies are made up of water? 90%, we have that? 70? 85%? Children, what do you think?
100%.
100%. What do you think? Okay, we have some good guesses. So, the actual answer is anywhere from 60 to 75%. It's a rough average. It obviously depends from person to person. Different organs within the body have different water compositions as well. For example, the brain will have a different water composition to the kidneys, for example. So this is one of Dr. Emoto's quotes. He says, water has memory and carries within it our thoughts and prayers. As you yourself are water, no matter where you are, your prayers will be carried to the rest of the world. So we've all just come today, we've had a wonderful bhajan. We are composed over 60% water. So imagine all that love, that positivity that we're walking away from here today. We may not have come with that positivity. Just think of all the water crystals in our body that are just forming these lovely shapes as we're singing. Okay, so let's come on to this. Is all related, okay, all interlinked. So we come on to the work of Dr. Jum Sai. Just a bit of background to Dr. Jum Sai. Very learned man, Oxford and Cambridge. And he actually worked on the landing device for the Viking project with NASA. So he's a top guy, and also heavily involved with the Sathya school in Thailand. So Dr. Jum Sai did an experiment with marigold seeds. Okay? So we know that our bodies are full of water. What about plants? Are our plants full of water? Yes? Good. Excellent. So he actually got some marigold seeds, and he put them under the same physical conditions. He had a control pot, which he did nothing to, and then he had another pot where he would just pour in loving thoughts. And then the results were that the pots which were exposed to loving thoughts grew 49.2% more than the control pot. Okay? Now I didn't have pictures of his exact plants, so I pulled this from the internet. But this experiment has been replicated everywhere, right? All over the place. You can see that a lot of teachers actually teach the power of positive thoughts in schools now, because we're trying to teach kids that bullying is bad, right? So they get these two plants, and one plant is said, the kids are told to say bullying words to that plant, and then the kids are told to say nice words to the other plant, just so that we understand the impact of our words, our thoughts and emotions. And you can see, obviously, the plant that was bullied. So one of the children, what do you think? Was the plant that was bullied, the one on the left, did it do well or not? No, it didn't do well. What about the one on the right? The one that was loved and cared for, did it do well? It did. So this again proves that the power of positive thoughts, and there are many examples on the internet. So when I was doing my research, there are some people on the internet that have done this experiment with rice. They do cook rice and they put it in three different airtight pots, and they replicate the same example, and 2 months later, same effects. The rice that was fed love, after 2 months is still edible, whereas the other two pots develop fungus and mold, and you know what food that's gone off looks like. So it can be replicated in many different ways. Final study which I'll talk about, the nun study. Okay? So moving away from water and plants, we're moving more into the psychological realm of things, okay? So the nun study was conducted by the University of Minnesota in the USA, and it was funded by the National Institute of Aging. And what they did was, the researchers, who were some psychologists, they looked at nuns who were living in this convent for over 60 years. Now, what is important about that? So all of the nuns are living in the same place. They're exposed to the same food, the same healthcare, the same daily habits, exercise habits, occupation, weather, everything is the same. So a lot of things are controlled for, right? 678 members of this convent were studied, and they lived anywhere from 75 all the way up to 106 years. Now what the researchers did was, when these nuns were living in this convent, they all wrote essays. They wrote diaries, and what they did was they studied the diaries of all of these nuns. This happened over decades. And they counted the number of positive and negative words that was written in these essays. And that was an indicator of how happy or otherwise these nuns may have been. So what are the results? So two different examples. There was one sister, this is just tiny examples, but I mean hundreds of nuns were studied in the study. We have Sister Marguerite and we have Sister Cecilia. Now Sister Marguerite always used to write in a bit of a negative way in her diary. She used to talk about unwanted sacrifice, how she was thrust into it and she had to do this duty and she didn't want to do it, and she talked about pain and sadness and suffering. But on the other hand, Sister Cecilia was full of joy. She always talked about her love for Jesus Christ, her love for God. She was very eager to be involved in the community, eager to do service activities. She was full of joy, and all the words in her essays just reflected a whole lot of positivity. Then what happened was, we found that at the time that the study finished, Sister Cecilia was still going strong in her mid-80s, whereas unfortunately by that time, Sister Marguerite had unfortunately lurched. And the overall conclusion of the study was that at age 90, 54% of the most cheerful nuns were still alive, and only 11% of the least cheerful. So this kind of suggests that the happier we are, the more positive emotions we have, the longer we will live. So we have a bit of background, right? So a bit of science, a bit of background. We'll come on to what Swami says momentarily. But how does this relate to us, and how does this relate to the Sai Health Week and my role as a GP? So we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety and depression. Okay? So this is a bit of an experiment. I want you guys to pay attention, because we'll have a couple of questions at the end. So, scenario one. Sort of think in terms of anxiety and depression. Scenario one. You are a Sai devotee, and you attend Sai activities often. Recently, you've noticed that one of your Sai brothers has been a bit different lately. He keeps coming late to bhajans. He's a great singer and instrumentalist, but sometimes he doesn't make it in time, even if he's scheduled to sing the Ganesh bhajan. He doesn't seem to be talking as much as he used to, You note that he looks more tired these days. He also seems more wound up and edgy, and when you talk to him about things that wouldn't normally have bothered him before, you think that he has put on a bit of weight recently, and sometimes you have noticed that he gets up in the middle of bhajans and goes out for several minutes at a time. What do we think is going on? Anybody?
He's depressed.
He's depressed, so Sister said
He hasn't been saying Gayatri.
he hasn't been saying Gayatri, probably not. Anybody else? What do we think is going on? Jen's side, anybody? Worries. Do you think he's anxious or depressed? Anxious. So we have anxiety. So everyone on the Jen's side thinks he's full of anxiety. Ladies' side, we think depression. Okay. Scenario 2. Just keep that thought. We'll bring it all together in a minute. Scenario 2. So you're a Sai devotee and you attend service activities frequently. Recently, you have noticed that one of your Sai sisters has gradually been becoming more distant. She doesn't seem to be as focused as she used to be. Others have commented that she is not looking after her specific service responsibilities. Sometimes she says that, does she even really need to be there at service? I mean, surely things would just go fine if she didn't turn up, right? She seems to be sick all the time and has headaches and body pains, and sometimes you have noticed that her breathing rapidly for several minutes at a time. So she breathes rapidly, you notice this. Happens for a few minutes, then it stops. You also think that she's lost a lot of weight. So previously the Sai brother had put on weight. This time, in this scenario, this Sai sister has lost a lot of weight. Once again, what do we think is going on? Is this anxiety? Is it depression? What do we think? Ladies?
Money worries.
What?
Money worries.
Money worries. The first brother wasn't saying Gayatri, this sister is poor. Okay. Anyone else? Anxious. Anxious and depressed. Oh wow. What do we think on the Jen side? Sick. Yeah, she's sick. Mental health is a sickness, yes. Okay. Margaret? Depressed. Okay. Unfortunately, in my daily work as a GP, I see anxiety and depression more often than other psychiatry problems. I'm not going to go into all of that. I'm just going to talk about the thing I see the most. Now, as the sister in the green pointed out, that actually in both of those scenarios, there's no clear-cut answer. You can't specifically say anxiety or depression. Think of it like a spectrum. You have anxiety on one end and you have depression on the other end. It's a spectrum, right? Some people are more towards the anxious side, some people are more towards the depression side, some people may be in the middle. And it's a bit of a spectrum. So actually, those two scenarios we saw earlier, there's a bit of both in all of those. This is just a rhetorical question for ourselves, right? This is Sai Health Week. So I want you to just think, what would you do if you recognize depression or anxiety in yourself, or if you recognize it in anyone around you, right? Just have a little bit of a think. No need to say anything, but just think, what would you do in this situation, right? We'll go through some brief features, okay? Takes me back to my med school days. So features of depression can be brought into these four categories: feelings, behavior, thoughts, and physical aspects, okay? Feelings. In depression, we get overwhelmed, we get guilty, irritable, frustrated, we lack confidence, we're unhappy, and all those low emotions like feeling miserable and sad. We may not want to socialize with others from a behavior point of view. We may not be concentrating at work or operating well in teams. And sometimes we have a lack of interest in certain things, right? If you're depressed, you may say negative things to yourself. You might tell yourself that you're a failure, or that you're worthless, or life is not worth living. So these thoughts come. And there can be physical manifestations as well. Mind is not separate from body. So mind and body are linked. So sometimes this can manifest as being tired, run down, headaches, muscle pains, you can have sort of nausea, sort of gut feelings. You might have sleep issues as well. You might oversleep, you might not sleep enough. And then you may get overeating, loss of appetite, weight loss or weight gain. So there's no clear-cut answer in this one. Features of anxiety, okay? So we may have panic attacks, we may get sweaty, hot, cold flushes, we might feel that racing in that heart. You know, sometimes when you get, we say palpitations, so that feeling of our heart racing. We might have quick breathing every now and again. Psychologically, we might have excessive fear, we worry, we might think that the world is going to end. Sometimes we worry about worrying. Sometimes this can be associated with excessive thinking as well. And we may avoid situations which make us feel more anxious. So, hopefully this is just a very brief overview, and it links into the power of positivity which we were talking about before. We'll link it all back in at the end, but I just want us to go away with maybe a little bit more awareness of these kind of issues, because they are present in the community. You may recognize this in yourself, you may recognize this in others around you. Don't be afraid to have a conversation. First thing you have to do is, if this happens, take a message, speak to somebody you trust. Maybe someone in the family, maybe a friend, maybe a brother or sister in the Sai organization. Go and see your GP, right? Make an appointment, see your GP. You can access psychologists through that. Now, the next point, Swami will talk against it in many of his discourses, but I'll mention it because this is what we have been trained in, and that's medical management. Okay, so we do have antidepressants, we do have anti-anxieties. They do work. They work. Sometimes some people need a little bit of help for a few months, maybe 1 or 2 years, and then they're back to their baseline. Other people take it a bit more longer term, and it helps with their functioning. But there is a role for medications out there. We prescribe this all the time. But as we will come on to later, Swami wants us to have this as a last resort, because he talks about not having to rely on drugs as a first instance. Remember, there's also support networks out there. So online support networks, community networks. There's a lot of help out there, okay? But the first step is, if you think you might be suffering, or you think someone else might be suffering, have a conversation first with somebody you trust. So, what does Swami say? Now, I've gone through, there's something called the Doctor's Day in Prashanti. He always gives a doctor's discourse, year in, year out. So there's lots and lots of literature out there of everything Swami says. He says a lot of different things. So, hurry, worry, and curry. It is only when the body, the mind, and the spirit are in harmony that peace will prevail. Swami says, medical science should recognize the role of the mind in causing sickness. Good health confers mental peace. Mental worry impairs physical health. Mind and the body are linked. Swami says we should see that a proper balance is maintained between the physical body and the inner feelings. Modern man is continuously in a hurry. Hurry causes worry, which affects the physical health. This is what I was saying earlier. Swami says that good thoughts are more efficacious than drugs. And this links back to the whole point of today's talk, which is the power of positive thoughts. It is better to remember. So this, to give you a bit of context, this quote, he's talking to cardiologists and cardiac surgeons. He's talking to heart surgeons, okay? And just to help us understand this a little better, what he's essentially saying is that even if you get a heart transplant from somebody, that person's thoughts which affected their heart, if you get that heart as a heart transplant, could affect you as well. Okay, so just let's read what Swami says. It is better to remedy the original heart of a patient than to try and replace it with another heart of a person whose antecedents may not be good, i.e. their previous thoughts. The heart is the most vital organ in the body. To keep it in a healthy condition, one's thoughts should be healthy. Good thoughts are more efficacious than drugs. Coming back to the power of positive thoughts. Swami doesn't say don't take drugs, by the way. He's got super specialty hospitals, general hospitals, and there's lots of doctors in Prashanti who prescribe medications that are necessary. He's not anti-drugs, but He's talking about the step before that. So if we can get to a stage where we don't need drugs, much better. Prevention is better than cure. Okay, let's do a little bit of a brainstorm with everybody. Just shout out, how do we cultivate positive thinking? What do we think? Yes, sir? Chant mantra. Thank you. Very good. Be aware of your thoughts. Very good. Sister Margaret, I know you want to say Gayatri mantra. or win the lottery. Health is our world. Health is our world. Good. Anybody else? Yes?
Be aware of what you're taking in through the media. Everything.
Be aware of what we're taking in through the media. So, following on from that, brother, is, Swami says food, right? So, food for the eyes, food for the ears, and what's the other one? Thoughts. Yes, good. Okay. Anybody else? How do we cultivate positive thinking? Namasmarana, love all, serve all. Service, repetition of the name. Anything else? Sing buttons, self-confidence. Sing buttons with self-confidence. Avoid bad company. What does Swami say? He says that, tell me your company and I'll tell you what you are, right? Anybody else? Yes? Accept the moment? Accept the moment or accept the situation? Yes, good. So this comes back to what Sister was saying, was what Swami said right at the start of this, which is that if a bad thought comes, distance yourself from it. So what Sister saying is accept it. The bad thought has come, or a bad situation has come, let's make the most of it, right? Let's not feel guilty or trouble ourselves that that situation has come in the first place. So you all have very skillfully covered most of these things. There are so many different things that we can do, right? We haven't got time today to dwell on all these things, but this is just a snippet. And you guys have mentioned most of these things. So food for the body, food for the eyes, and food for the ears. The importance of good company, sadhana. There are hundreds and thousands of different sadhana. And sense control. And then the last one, which we will come on to in a minute, which is how do we develop and sustain a connection with God? And the reason this is important is Swami talks about happiness. What does Swami say about happiness? He says that happiness is union with God. So we need to somehow learn how to develop and sustain that connection. Power of positive thoughts. We're driving away negative thoughts. We want to stay away from anxiety and depression. And we want to develop happiness, which is union with God. Right. Now I'm going to finish off, Brother Sandip, with a few slides. We will do this. I think this is very important. I came across this some years ago, and I'll never let this one go. I always try and share this with as many people as possible. This is not in a book. This is a dialogue between Swami and his student. Okay? And this all relates to the power of positive thought, which is what we're talking about today. So, Brother Sandip, if I can get you to read out what Swami says, and then I'll read out the students' dialogue.
I have confidence in me. I shall look after everything for you.
So the student says, doesn't it go without saying, Baba, all your devotees have faith and confidence in you?
No, all my devotees have faith in me. That is correct. But not all of them have confidence in me. Faith is one thing and confidence is another thing. Only when the two exist together, there will be a positive reaction from me. If you consider a car, for example, it runs on petrol and battery. If even one of them is absent, the car will not function. For it to run without any trouble, the tank should be full of petrol, and the battery should be in a good condition. Even if the tank is full and the battery is not in proper condition, the car cannot run smoothly. It may break down and stop at any time. Repairing and restoring the battery takes a longer time than filling the tank with petrol. So actually, the battery is more important than the petrol. Now faith is like petrol, and confidence is like the battery. When you have confidence in God, you will have a positive battery charge. And when you are positively charged, the response from God too is immediate and positive. If you want a positive reaction or response from me, mere faith is not sufficient. It should go hand in hand with confidence. Only then is your devotion complete, purna. And when you have purna bhakti, or complete devotion, the response from me will also be purna, or total.
So Swami, what exactly do you mean by confidence, Baba? How is confidence different from faith?
You see, it is like this. Faith in God means faith that He is God, that He is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, and so on. Confidence means trust in the word, will, and work of God. If I say something, there is a reason. If I will something to happen, it is for a reason. If I do something, it is with reason. However, it is not enough if you merely hear the inner voice. More importantly, you should listen to it, follow its advice, and carry out its instruction implicitly and unquestioningly, because the advice and instructions are those of the divine Satguru. It is only when you listen to and obey the voice that you will find peace and happiness.
How would you explain fine-tuning, Baba?
Fine-tuning is the degree of your concentration. There are 3 stages in concentration. In the first stage, you receive my messages in the form of thought waves. In the second stage, you can hear my own voice, and in the third stage, you can hear my voice as well as see me. With successful Chitta Suddhi, purification of the mind, you will be able to progress from stage to stage.
Is it possible for everyone to experience the inner voice?
Of course, why not? I have already told you that when mind is still and silent, the voice of God can be heard. The mind is like a switch. If you turn it to the left, you tune it in the world. God is present everywhere and in everyone. He's Sarvantarayami. The question is not whether He can make Himself heard. The question is whether you have the ability to hear Him. Everyone who has the ability to clear the mind of disquiet, unrest, thoughts and conflicts, and is able to keep the mind in a state of equilibrium, can tune in to the inner voice of God. After all, silence is God. When the heart and mind are silent, you can experience God.
So, key take-home messages from today. We have talked about the power of positive thought. We have covered a few of the many scientific studies that are out there in the world. Lots of studies have been done, various different types. And I think more and more is being done now, but we've covered a few of them. This is not meant to be an exhaustive sort of lecture or presentation, but hopefully we'll go away with a little bit more awareness of anxiety, depression, which are common things. There's lots and lots of mental health issues that are prevalent in the community, but these are some of the more common things that we may come across in ourselves or others. A little bit of awareness. So hopefully you'll know that there is help out there. Don't be afraid to speak to people. We've talked a little bit about cultivating positive thinking today and what methods we may wish to use. Everyone here is an expert. You came up with wonderful examples. We have touched on Swami's teachings and what he says about this. And let us leave, brothers and sisters and children, with this message that happiness is union with God, and both faith and confidence are necessary for a very positive response from Swami. Thank you, Uncle. That's very important. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's important to know that everybody's journey is individual. There's absolutely no one solution fits all. Just because you have positive thinking doesn't mean it's going to solve all of your problems, but it's a start. And I think it's a good start to start there and see where it takes us. Thank you, Uncle, for sharing that. Sarah.